All right. So let's start. Here we are going to learn about some basic concepts and some definitions and certain fundamental things regarding statistics. What is statistics and why we are going to learn statistics? Okay. So basically, so here, these are the things that we are going to discuss today. We are going to learn about the variables and also the levels of measurements other than the basic parts. Right. So do you have any idea about what is statistics? And do you have any practical experience in using statistics in your day-to-day life? Can you give me an example? Stat use වෙනවා කියලා හිතන statistics ඔයගොල්ලෝ use කරන use කරලා තියෙන daily life එකේ මොන හරි situations ඔයගලන්ට මතක් වෙනවද?
business වල මට
ඔව් business වල business වල මොන වගේ දේවල් වලද? business වලදී ගොඩක් වෙලාවට stat use කරනවා.
stock evolution, price evolutions like that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. They are practically we are using statistics. මොන හරි අපිට ඉස්සරහට වෙන්න තියෙන දෙයක් predict කරලා if you want to predict that means if you want to make certain conclusion, make a prediction about a future event, we are using certain concepts in statistics. For example, the simplest example is here, this one. Practically, when you are going out from the house, from your home, if it is kind of a gloomy day, you think whether to bring an umbrella or not, right? So then what you have to do, that is based on the environmental figures, and sometimes you might have heard the weather report last night, right? Based on that, you analyze whether to bring an umbrella or not, right? All these things are and if you consider the weather report, right, that is, it said sometimes there is 80% chance to rain, there is 75% chance to rain. So that all these things are based on statistics, right? So by with data. So basically here what we are doing is with data. That means with using the weather, referring the weather report, and also observing the environmental behavior, right? So those are the data. Those are data for this scenario. Right. So there, what we are going to do is based on this data, we are going to we come to a certain conclusion. Okay, yes, it's going to rain. I will bring an umbrella. Likewise. So those are some basic practical things that we are using statistics in our day-to-day life. But there, here we are in such cases we are not going to use any statistical terms or those things. But the concept is basically statistics. And also here, in last 2-3 years, right, we faced with this coronavirus pandemic. Right. In that case, every day we heard about these numbers and figures, right? අපි හැමතිස්සෙම numbers, figures වලින්, percentages වලින් අපි හැමතිස්සෙම deal කරේ. So there, statistics played an important role, right? Let's go to another example here, where this is very practical example. I think you all have an experience in cooking, right? Sometimes you may not, but if you have this experience, right, here also we are using certain statistical concepts, right? For example, if you want to check whether a certain curry or a certain a pot of rice is cooked properly, what you are going to do. You are going to eat the whole thing and decide it is cooked properly or not. Likewise, ඔගොල්ලෝ මොන හරි කෑමක් ඉදිලාද කියන්නේ හොඳට හරියට හැදිලාද කියලා බලනකොට මුළු කෑම එකම කාලා බලන්නේ නැහැ නේද? මොකද කරන්නේ? You take a part of that and check whether it is cooked properly or not, right? Then you conclude that, right? Okay, this whole thing is cooked properly. right මේ පොඩ්ඩ හරියට ඉදිලා නම් එහෙනම් මේ ඔක්කොම ටික අපිට හරියට cook වෙලා කියලා අපි decide කරනවා. right? They are also here we are using statistical concepts, right? So in statistics there is a concept called sampling, right? In sampling also we do the same thing, right? Only the difference is we are using certain statistical and technical terms, right? ඒ වගේ practically අපි ඇත්තටම බලුවොත් එන statistics කියන subject එක like concepts after day-to-day life එකේදී හරියට වැදගත් වෙනවා. Therefore, not only for your studies, right? For practical day-to-day life, day-to-day incidents, right? If we have the knowledge of statistics, right? Then I think it would be an advantage for you in making decisions, right? Making more correct, accurate decisions. Okay, right. So during the lecture, if you have any questions, you have freedom to ask any question, right? And no matter the language, if you want to conduct this in Sinhala medium, please let me know, right? That's okay for me. Right. So here basically on statistics, actually there are many definitions in the given handout. I have in the given note, I have mentioned few of the definitions. Here, right. I think you can see this this one here. So there are certain definitions in statistics. Here I have mentioned a few, right? One is statistics is the science of making decisions under uncertainty and variability. Basically, as statisticians, right? When we have a problem and once we give a conclusion or a decision, once we are going to make decisions, right? We give our decisions or conclusions under uncertainty, right? ඒ කියන්නේ අපිට හැමතිස්සෙම අපි දෙන decision එක අපි කියන්නේ we don't say that it is 100% accurate, right? There might be an error in our decisions, right? අපේ decision එකේ error එකක් තියෙන්න පුළුවන්, right? Our decisions may be vary according to certain effects, certain factors, right? But as statisticians, what we always try is we always try to minimize that error, right? අපි හැමතිස්සෙම try කරන්නේ අපි අතින් වෙන්න පුළුවන් අපි conclusion එකක් decision එකක් දෙන්න යද්දී අපිට අතින් වෙන්න පුළුවන් අපි wrong decision එකක් දෙන්න තියෙන chance එක probability එක හැමතිස්සෙම අඩු වෙන විදිහට අපි decisions දෙන්න තමයි හැමතිස්සෙම try කරන්නේ, right? Statistical concepts, techniques හැම එකක්ම හැදිලා තියෙන්නේ ඒ විදිහට. Okay, right. So in the second definition, you can see that statistics is a mathematical science pertaining to the collection, analysis, interpretation, or explanation and presentation of data, right? Okay, so likewise, you have here I have mentioned four different definitions. There are many others. However, if we consider all these definitions and the summary is something like this, right? මේ හැම definition එකකම ඇත්තටම summary එක තියෙන්නේ මෙන්න මේ වගේ දෙයක්. Statistics is it's kind of a it is a science. It is the science of collecting, organizing, presenting, right, analyzing and interpreting data to make effective decisions under uncertainty, right? Under uncertainty අපි මොකද කරන්නේ? අපි effective decisions data වලින් අපිට information retrieve කරගන්න science එකට තමයි අපි කියන්නේ statistics කියලා. Right, here when we are doing a statistic any study, right, we have to achieve all these phases, right? We have to collect data, we have organized data, we have to present, analyze them, and we have to interpret our results. So this is the most important part, interpretation, right? අපි මොන හරි output එකක් ගත්තාම අපිට පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ output එක interpret කරන්න, right? So here, so in each and every stage of any statistical, of any research or study, right, statistics plays an important role. For example, if you are doing a proper study, right, in data collection part, we have to use certain statistical techniques. When we are going to organize and present data, again we can use several statistical approaches. And also to analyze data, definitely you have to use statistical techniques. And for the interpretations also, we need the knowledge of statistics, right? So in any field, in any discipline, right, when you are going to do any research or any study, right, you have to deal with all these things, and there statistics plays an important role. Right. Okay. Now I think you have the idea about the importance of statistics and why you should learn statistics. Right. So here, if we go back to this slide, basically what we are going to do is in statistics, what we are doing is here, if we have this kind of a data set and we come up with this kind of information from data. Right, අපි ගාව තියෙන data set එකකින් අපිට මොන හරි valuable information අරගන්න අපිට අරගන්න තියෙන හැම process එකකදීම අපිට we have to use the statistics, right? Okay, so that's about the basics of statistics. How we can define this term. Right. Okay. Here I have given you some of the examples that we can use statistics in certain disciplines. For example, if in zoology, right, you can use statistics to identify come up with in this kind of studies. Like, for example, if you want to see the relationship between air temperature and the oxygen consumption of these birds, right, there you can use statistical techniques, right? And if you want to study the body temperature of a black cap, right, according to the time, again you can use certain statistical techniques. Here, these are some of the examples where we can use statistics, right? And also in lab research, definitely you have to use statistics. So in food research, also you have to use statistical techniques, right? They are from the beginning, from data collection and from designing the experiments, right? Experiment design right? There you have to use certain statistical concepts. Okay, right. Now I think you have an idea about statistics and why you should learn statistics. Okay. Here, now we are going to discuss about we are going to discuss about the branches of statistics, right? So basically in statistics, there are two branches. One is descriptive statistics and the other one is the inferential statistics, right? When we are doing any research, you have to deal with both descriptive statistics as well as inferential statistics. So what is descriptive statistics? In descriptive statistics, what we are doing is we are going to describe our data set using certain figures, tables, likewise. So certain summary measures like mean, median, mode, those things. Right, අපි descriptive statistics වලදී අපි කරන්නේ data අපි describe කරනවා. අපි ගාව තියෙන data set එක. Most of the times we have to deal with samples. Right, we have to deal with sample data. අපිට target එක තිබ්බට අපි target group එකක් තිබ්බට සමහරවිට අපිට target group එක achieve කරන්න අපිට බැරි වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒකට ඒ වගේ වෙලාවට අපි කරන්නේ target group එක represent වෙන විදිහට අපි ගන්නවා subset එකක් ඒකේ. ඒකට අපි කියනවා statistics වලදී අපි target group එකට අපි කියන්නේ population එකක් කියලා. ඊළඟට අපි ගන්න subset එකට අපි කියන්නේ sample එකක් කියලා. We will discuss those things later. And so before we are going to make conclusions about our target group, right? First of all, we should have an idea about the nature of our data set. There ගාව තියෙන data set එක ගැන අපිට idea එකක් තියෙන්න ඕනි. කොහොමද composition එක gender wise කොහොමද composition එක data set එකේ. ඊළඟට area wise කොහොමද මොනවා හරි plants නම් ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ type එක අනුව කොහොමද behave. ඒ වගේ describe කරන්න. To describe our data set we use descriptive statistics. There we can use tables, graphs, summary measures like variance, mean, skewness, ඒ වගේ summary measures, ඒ වගේ දේවල් use කරලා අපිට පුළුවන් අපේ data set එක describe කරගන්න. Right, so in descriptive statistics statistics is used to describe our data set. Data set එක describe කරන්න තමයි අපි descriptive statistics use කරන්නේ. Okay, right. And inferential statistics. In inferential statistics, what we are going to do is once we get the here you can see, so this is data only used for descriptive purposes. Here we are using data only for descriptive purposes, right? Only for descriptive purposes, right? And here we are not going to make any predictions, right? And here, as I mentioned earlier, you can use these methods to describe your data set. And then inferential statistics. So what is this inferential statistics? It deals with the methods of inferring or drawing conclusions about the characteristics of the population based upon the results of the sample taken from the same population, right? And here, inferential statistics, sample data are used to draw inferences to make predictions about one or more populations from which the samples have been derived. So the meaning of this statement is like this. In inferential statistics, so basically, as I mentioned earlier, most of the times we have to deal with sample data. Right? So if this is your target group in statistics, this target group is called as the population. Target group අපි target group එකට අපි කියන්නේ ළමයි population කියලා. අපි study කරන අපි target group එකට statistics වලදී අපි දෙන technical term එක තමයි population. ඒකට හැමතිස්සෙම population එක අපි target කරන group එක. For example, if you are going to do a study regarding the individuals in Sri Lanka, right? හිතන්න ලංකාවේ ඉන්න මිනිස්සුන්ගේ මොනවා හරි අපි හිතමුකෝ, for example, if you are going to do a research based on the monthly household income of the households in Sri Lanka, right? Your target group is all the households in Sri Lanka. So that is our population. But practically, it is very difficult to reach each and every household in Sri Lanka. It will take a long time. Right? ගොඩක් කල් යනවා අපිට ඔය වගේ ස්ටඩි එකක් කරන්න මුළු පොපියුලේෂන් එක ටාගට් ගෲප් එකම කවර් කරන්න ගියොත්. එහෙම කරන වෙලාවල් ඕගොල්ලෝ දැකලා ඇති සමහරවිට. Sometimes we have to collect data from each and every element in our target group. Can you give me an example for that? අපි target කරන group එකේ හැම කෙනාගේම හැම individual කෙනෙක්ගේම අපි data collect කරගන්න. ඒ වගේ practical example එකක් ඔයගලන්ට මතක නම් කියන්න බලන්න. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ලංකාවේ ඉන්න හැම මිනිස්සයාගේම data අපි එකතු කරන්න යනවා. ඒ වගේ practically ඒ වගේ කරන research studies ගැන ඔයගලන්ට idea එකක් තියෙනවද? I can't hear properly. Nutrition. මොකක්ද මට හරියට clear නැහැ. All right. Oh, හරි. මම හිතන්නේ යා කිව්වේ ජනහානි වාස සංගණනය කියලා වෙන්න ඇති. Yeah, actually that is your answer is correct. So some of you have give some examples, give nutritional survey, election, annual population survey. Yeah, in the election, we are considering a specific specific group of individuals, right? Not all the individuals in the country. Election එකදී අපි අවුරුදු 18ට වැඩි ඒ වගේ target group එකක් තියෙනවානේ. ඒකට ඒ වගේ වෙලාවක මම නිකන් අදහස් කළේ මුළු ලංකාවෙම ඉන්න කට්ටිය අපි information ගන්න එකක් තමයි අර විදිහට අර census from the Department of Census and Statistics, right? Once 10 years actually. Once 10 years they are doing a survey, right? Household ගැන survey එකක් කරනවා. එතකොට ඒක අවුරුදු ගොඩක් වෙලාවට අවුරුදු 10කට සැරයක් ඒ වගේ තමයි කරන්නේ. The reason is it is very difficult to conduct such sense. So those kind of studies are called as census. අපි sampling වලදී ඔය දේ කතා කරනවා. එතකොට ඒ වගේ සෙන්සස් එකක් කරන්න. එතකොට අපි හැම ඉන්ඩිවිජුවල් කෙනෙක්ගේම data එකතු කරන්න ඕනේ. එතකොට ගොඩක් practical problems තියෙනවා. අපිට data collect කරගන්න cost එක, time එක, ඊළඟට we need more experts on the field, right? So there are many practical difficulties are there. So therefore, to mitigate those difficulties, right? If difficulties mitigate karana, minimize karana, most of the times what we are doing is we are taking a subset from this target group or the population, right? අපි කරන්නේ මේ population එකෙන් subset එකක් අරගන්න. හැබැයි but it is very important that this subset, the selected group, the selected subset, we call in statistics, we call it as the sample, right? මේ sample එක තෝරගනිද්දී අපි හොඳට මතක තියාගන්න ඕනේ මේ population එක represent වෙන විදියට, right? Your sample should represent your population properly. මේ population එක හරියට represent වෙන විදිහට අපි sample එක අරගන්න. For example, if we consider the previous example about the study of households in Sri Lanka, right? Is it okay if we get a sample only from the Western province and make conclusions about the whole country?
No.
No, it is not accurate. මොකද Western province එකේ ඉන්න households ලා represent households ලාගෙන් ලංකාවේ හැම පැත්තකම ඉන්න households ලා represent වෙන්නේ නැහැනේ. Right? They are ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ backgrounds they are different. Right? Therefore, representing your sample should represent your population well. Otherwise, your conclusions will be misleading. right? So in inferential statistics, what we are doing is, so here we are interested about certain population characteristics. So there we are called them as population parameters. For example, we are interested about the average monthly income of household in Sri Lanka. ලංකාවේ household එකක average monthly income එක කීයද? average එක කොච්චරක් වෙනවද? ඊළඟට මොනවා හරි disease එකක් තියෙන proportion එක කොච්චරක්ද ලංකාවේ? proportion, average, right? average එක අපි mean කියලා කියමුකෝ. mean එක, proportion එක, ඒ වගේ characteristics තමයි අපි ඇත්තටම interested. අපිට දැනගන්න ඕනේ average income එක කීයද? ඊළඟට average weight එක infants ලගේ birth weight එක, average birth weight එක, ලංකාවේ ඉපදෙන infants ලගේ average birth weight එක, average value එක කීයද? ඒ වගේ characteristics ගැන තමයි අපි ඇත්තටම interest. එතකොට ඒ වගේ, so those are in the population. එතකොට අපි ඇත්තටම අපි address කරන්න ඕනි මෙන්න මේවට answers තමයි අපි දෙන්න ඕනේ. But we have only sample data, right? If we are using a sample, we are dealing with sample data, right? And then here, so what inferential statistics, what we are doing is, based on sample data, we make conclusions about these population characteristics. අපි ගාව sample එකේ තියෙන data පාවිච්චි කරලා හිතන්නකෝ අපි ගාව sample එකක් තියෙනවා 100ක. අපි ගාව households ලා 100 දෙනෙක්ගේ income එක තියෙනවා. එතකොට අපි මොකද කරන්නේ? ඒ 100 දෙනාගේ income එක අරගෙන ඒක average එක calculate කරලා අපි කියනවා okay මෙයාගේ average එක 40,000, right? මේ sample එකේ average එක 40,000. එහෙනම් අපිට කියන්න පුළුවන් ලංකාවේ අපිට කියන්න පුළුවන් ලංකාවේ ඉන්න households ලාගේ average එක 40,000. Right? So here, if this average is 40,000, if this average is if the average of the sample data set is 40,000, okay, then we can conclude that the average income of the households in Sri Lanka is 40,000 likewise. But we'll discuss these things more deeply in inferential statistics, so don't think about that. I want to explain the difference between descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. So in inferential statistics, that but basically what we are doing is from sample data that we are using, right? From sample data we make conclusions about our population characteristics or our population parameters, right? So that is what we are basically doing in inferential statistics. Descriptive statistics, in descriptive statistics, what we are doing is we basically we come up with a picture about this sample, how the variables in the sample behave. What are the characteristics of those variables, like that. In inferential statistics, based on sample data, we are going to make conclusions about your population characteristics, right? So that is the difference between inferential statistics and the descriptive statistics, right? Okay, before we are going to discuss about the other things, so first of all, let's it's good to discuss about these things, right? Some terminology that we are going to that we are using in statistics, right? The first thing is the population. Okay, the first thing is so if you want to note down anything, you can do it now. I will give you a few minutes, and if you have any questions, you can put them on the chat box. One is asking that inferential statistic and universal sets are same. No, they are not same actually. Inferential statistics is kind of a branch of it's a branch of statistics, right? Okay, now we are going to, now let's discuss about this, what is this population and the other things. So population is basically, as I mentioned earlier, it is the set of all elements in the universe of interest to the researcher. To the researcher has to define the population, because that is depend on his or her study, his or her scope of the study, right? If you are going to discuss about, for example, if you as I mentioned earlier, if you are going to study the individuals in Sri Lanka, so all the individuals in Sri Lanka becomes the population. Okay, right. So, and for example, um, uh, mm, uh, if I want to study about the weight of your the average weight of your group, right? Group, okay, in students lage, right? I want to study the average weight, right, of the of your group, average weight of the students of this group. So then what is the population? I want to study the average weight of students of this group. So what is the population there? ඔයාලගේ group එකේ average weight එක students ඉන්න කට්ටියගේ average weight එක මට calculate කරගන්න. Then what will be the target population? Population mean here the set of elements that we are interested, right? We want to study about the average weight. That is our target. But to come up with the average value, right, we have to collect data from certain elements or individuals or certain objects, right? So those a group of objects or those group of individuals are called as the population, right? අපි data collect කරන group එක, target group එක තමයි population. For example, if you want to study the average weight of students in your class, right, I'm going to collect the weight, right, of each and every student in your class. Then my population is all the students in your class, right? And here I have given you some examples. So this population can be finite or infinite. Finite means if you can, if it is possible to count its individuals in the population, then it is called as a finite population. Sometimes, right, it is not easy to count, or it is not possible to count how many elements are there or how many individuals are there in the population, right? For example, this one, number of germs in the body of a patient of malaria, right? Here it is if you are doing any or you can, if otherwise a number of germs in the body of a if we consider this example, number of germs in the body of a patient of malaria, right? It is it is not possible to count how many germs are there in the body of a patient of malaria. But if we are doing a test, a medical test regarding this malaria regarding this malaria patient, right, we have to deal with the germs in the body. So the target population is number of germs in the body, but it is not countable, right? So those kind of populations are called as what we call this as an infinite population, right? Okay, now I want to explain what is a parameter. I discussed it earlier. A parameter is a descriptive measure of a population. A descriptive measure of a population is called as a parameter. For example, population mean, variance, proportion, standard deviation, and so on, right? So if basically, simply, the characteristics of a population is called as um, uh, parameters, right? Basically, when we are doing a study, right, basically we are interested about these characteristics of the population. So we are going to address these characteristics like mean. Sometimes we are interested about the average value of a certain characteristic, or proportion, sometimes the variance, and those things. And here, the sample, what is a sample? Sample is kind of a proportion or subset of the population of interest, right? So sample is basically a um, subset or a part or proportion of the population, as I mentioned earlier, right? However, the sample must be representative of the population, and it is the collection of sampling units drawn from a sampling frame or frames. I will discuss those things under sampling, so don't worry about that. So basically, the sample is a representative subset of this population. Right. So in a sample also we can calculate certain characteristics. We can identify certain characteristics. For example, sample mean, sample variance, sample proportion. Right. Those things are the characteristics of a sample. So those characteristics are called as statistics. So basically, you must remember that. So these are very important. You must remember that these parameters are in the population and the statistics are in your sample, right? Okay. Then elements. So what are the elements? Elements Elements are the entities or objects which the information are collected, right? Api information collect karana entities in the objects or the elements right? For example, if we consider the previous example, if we consider the household income of the households in Sri Lanka, the households are the elements. And in the second example, I gave you, if I want to get the average weight of the students in your class, the elements are, what are the elements in that example experiment? Students are the elements. Api data collect and we collect data from students. So students are the elements, right? And likewise, variable. So here, variable is a characteristic. So we will discuss these variables very in detail in next slides, right? So variable, basically a variable is a characteristic or an attribute of a statistical unit or entity of interest with values that are numeric or non-numeric. Basically, a variable is a characteristic or an attribute of a statistical entity, right? For example, if you consider a student, right? Can you give me some variables regarding a student? I can define a variable, height of the student. So it's a characteristic of the student. Can you suggest another few variables regarding a student in your class? Variable එක කියන්නේ මොකක් හරි characteristic එකක් අපි measure කරන. One says weight. Yes, that's true. Height, weight, marks for statistics course, average GPA, right? Those are the variables, right? We collect variables from the entities or the elements, right? Data. What is data? Measurements of facts that are collected from a statistical unit. Api collect කරන, right? Yeah, in the there is another answer, gender. Yes, true. That is also a variable. So what is a date? What is data, right? And so data, basically data are observed values of a variable, right? If we consider the weight, so if you have 15 students, you have 15 data points. For each individual, you have a data point regarding that variable. So that is what we call data, measurements of facts that are collected from a statistical unit, right? Or the entity of interest, right? We statistical unit එකකින් entity එකකින් අපි collect කරන measurements facts වලට තමයි අපි කියන්නේ data කියලා. Right. So those words are mostly used when we are learning statistics. So that is why I wanted to explain these things separately. And here these are some of the limitations of statistics. Right. Basically, statistics does not deal with individual values. We always deal with a set of data points, right? Right, and so likewise, you have there are certain limitations. So among that, is the fifth one is very common in our country. Statistics can be misused mostly, right? Though the certain parties known about is aware about statistics or not, right? They are misusing using these statistics. Right, so ගොඩක් කලාට statistics misuse කරන වෙලාවල් තමයි අපිට දකින්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ. So this is kind of a limitation of statistics. Sometimes some interpretation, statistical interpretations, right, requires high degree of skill and understanding of the subject, right? Sometimes in practical, in general audience, general public, sometimes in some the conclusions or the decisions of a certain studies, right, will not be understandable. So that is another another limitation. And also sometimes the conclusions will not be universally true, right? Sometimes if you are doing the same example, if we are doing the study regarding monthly household income in Sri Lanka, right? So that is valid within our country. But if we consider a country like Australia, USA, UK, New Zealand, likewise, right, those conclusions may not be valid. So those are some kind of limitations in statistics. So when we are dealing with statistical techniques and when we are going to give certain conclusions, you have to keep these things in your mind, right? Otherwise, your results will be misleading to others. Okay. So that's about statistics and limitations, and we have discussed certain terminology regarding statistics. Right. Okay, now we are going to discuss about the variables. Most important part in statistics, variables. Right. Basically, variable is a characteristic of a population or a sample that is of interest. Api මොකක් හරි යුනිට් එකකින් කලෙක්ට් කරගන්න යුනිට් එකක් කන්සිඩර් කළාම එයාගේ තියෙන characteristics තමයි අපි කියන්නේ variable කියලා. For example, as I mentioned earlier, if we consider a student in your class, variables will be gender, height, weight, GPA, age, right? And their hobby, whether they are stay at home or hostel. Likewise, those are the variables. Okay, And when we are discussing about the variables, so those variables will be basically we divide the variables into two categories. So those are qualitative variables and quantitative variables. Sometimes these qualitative variables are called as categorical variables, and these quantitative variables are sometimes called as numerical variables, right? Qualitative ඒවා categorical කියලා කියනවා, quantitative ඒවා numerical කියලා කියනවා. And again, these quantitative variables or numerical variables can be divided into two categories, discrete and continuous. Okay. So first of all, let's discuss about, so if you want to note down this, just do it now. Okay, now let's start with this categorical variables. Or sometimes it is called as qualitative variables, right? Basically, categorical or qualitative variables in qualitative, the main characteristic is it is kind of, we measure a kind of a quality or yeah, certain characteristics like those are basically these variables yield non-numerical information, right? Often referred as categorical variables. That means we always measure a quality, right? For example, gender. In gender, there is no any numerical sense for the variable gender. So that in gender, there are two categories, male and female, and there is no any numerical sense. That means male is greater than female. We can't say like that, right? And if you consider the educational qualification, there might be O levels, A levels, then the degree, diploma, degree, PhD. Likewise, there may be certain levels, certain categories for that variable, but there is no any numerical sense for those variables. And for marital status, likewise, here always they are kind of numeric kind of categorical variables. Here we have another two answers: religious group, yes, that is categorical. Address, yes, it is also kind of a categorical variable, right? And if we consider about the quantitative variables, quantitative means, or the numerical means, it quantitative, or those variables always deal with numerical information. For example, age in years, monthly income of a household, marks for statistics, right? Weight of a student, and likewise, right? So there we can number of siblings in the family. Likewise, yes, there may be a certain there is a numerical sense for those quantitative variables, or they are called as numerical variables. So I think you can easily understand the difference between qualitative variables and quantitative variables, right? So yeah. And guys, please, if I'm talking speed, please let me know. Right, then I don't know whether you can understand these things whether I'm fast or not, right? So please let me know if you feel some kind of difficulty in understanding those things, right? Some of you have suggested to conduct this in English medium because they are not familiar with Sinhala. So, however, I will in certain points I will explain those things in both languages. So, however, if you have any questions, no matter what is the language, please ask the question, or you can put them in the chat box, right? Okay. Now we will discuss what are the as we discussed earlier, there are in a quantitative variables, there are again two categories: discrete variables and continuous variables. The numerical variables categories දෙකකට වෙන් කරන්න පුළුවන්, discrete and continuous scale. In discrete variables, the main characteristic is we can assume only a countable number of values, and here we have gaps between any arbitrary values. Right, values always we can find gaps between arbitrary values. So we will discuss that with an example. For example, a number of children in a family. Okay, so if we consider this variable number of children in a family, what are the possible values for this number of children in a family? Can it take values like this, -1, -2, likewise? Is it okay to have the values like this? You can't, right? Negative values තියෙන බෑනේ ගෙදරක ඉන්න ළමයි ගන්නට. Is it okay to have 0? The value 0? Yes. Sometimes in certain families, they might not have any children. They might not have any children. So this 0 is a possible value. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, likewise. Right? But have you ever heard that there are 1.1 children in a family? Sorry, 0.1 children in a family, or 1.56 children in a family, likewise? Have you heard about that? Is it possible or not? Is it possible to have 1.56 children in a family? No, it is not possible, right? So that is why in discrete variables, right, there is always gaps between, we can identify gaps, easily identify gaps between any consecutive point. See, in between 0 and 1, you can guess any possible value for the variable number of children in a family, or between 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4, likewise. There are no any possible values in between those consecutive points. So then these are called as discrete variables. However, still they are numericals, right? Numerical, but they are discrete. Number of lectures per day, likewise. Okay, so that's about discrete variables. And then we are going to discuss about continuous variables. In continuous case, right, not like in discrete, you can take an uncountable number of values if you consider any consecutive point. What is the meaning of that? For example, if we consider the variable weight of a student, right? So if you consider the weight of a student, right? If we consider two values, let's say 45 and 46, can you assume a value like this? 45.6. Can you assume this value? Is it a possible value for the variable weight? It is possible, right? And also in between 45 and 40.6, you can assume infinite number of possible values, right? So likewise, if you consider, right, if you consider any consecutive point, for example 45 and 45.001, in between those two points, again you can assume possible infinite number of values, right? So those kind of variables are called as continuous variables. I think you can understand the difference between discrete variables and continuous variables now. However, so as a summary, variables divides into two parts, numericals and categoricals, or sometimes they are called as quantitative variables and qualitative variables. Quantitative variables again divides into two parts, discrete and continuous. Right. So before we are going to do any kind of a study or any kind of an analysis, the very first thing is identifying your variable and identifying the type of the variable. Because for categorical variables, we have to use certain statistical techniques, and for numerical variables, we have to use uh, completely different tools to analyze them. Therefore, if you have, for example, for a certain categorical variable, if you have identified that it is a numerical variable, then your conclusions, your analysis is all going wrong, and your conclusions will be completely wrong and inaccurate. So therefore, as a student who are learning statistics, right, you should be able to understand the variable type before you are going to analyze your variables. That is the most important thing. Okay. Right. So along with the variables, right, here we have to learn about this level of measurements. So this is it is also important regarding the variables, right? So if we consider the variables, right, these levels of measurement for each variable, we can identify the level of measurement, right? Basically, simply these levels of uh, measurements uh, indicates, right, how much information the numbers associated with the certain variable, right? Basically, in statistics, there are 4 levels of measurements: nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. Right. So let's discuss what are these variables. So have you learned about these things earlier? You have done this, right? Okay. And then it's easy for me. Okay, right. So basically the first level is the basic level is nominal measurement. It is the designation of an observation with a value which is merely a name or a label. In this kind of measurements, right, in nominal scale variables, right, basically you can identify, those categorical variables are under this scale, right? For example, if you consider the marital status, right, or the variable gender, here you can easily identify only the categories: gender, male and female. So those are just labels, right? You can't do any calculations with this, right? So if we consider certain mathematical operators, right, you can check whether if you have two individuals, right, let's say A and B, you have A and B, and you want to uh, compare the gender of A and B. Can you do this kind of a comparison? Can you compare whether the gender of A is equal to gender of B? For example, this A is a male and B is a female. Can you compare the genders of A and B? Is it okay or not? Can you compare the genders between two individuals? Whether the genders are equal or not? Can you do that? Any answer? Actually, you can do this. Because if you have two individuals, one is a male and the other one is a female, you can say, no, these genders are not same, right? You can do this kind of a comparison if you have a variable like this. So in nominal scale, right, you can do this kind of a comparison. So can you do this kind of a comparison? Can you say the gender of A is greater than gender of B? එහෙම කියන්න පුළුවන්ද? Male is greater than female. Can you say like that? No, it is not possible. So this kind of a comparison can be done, but the others no, right? So those are the characteristics of a nominal scale measurement, right? Let's go to the next level, ordinal scale. In ordinal scale, what we have all the features in nominal measure, and also you can rank order the categories. For example, quality of a product, excellent, good, fair, or poor. You can categorize there. Also, you can identify certain categories or the labels. But the interesting thing is, though you couldn't order male and female, අපිට male female order කරන්න බැරි වුණා කවුද උඩින් ඉන්නේ කවුද පල්ලෙහාන් ඉන්නේ කියලා. But in the examples like this, we know that this fair is better than poor, good is better than fair, and the excellent is the best among all. Likewise, we can order these categories, right? For example, if you consider the educational qualification, here you can see, sorry. Now I think you can see the PowerPoint presentation. Okay. So thank you very much for that. Right. So here, as I mentioned earlier, then you can categorize, you have the categories of your variable, and the other, the advanced feature is you can order these categories from here to here. We know that if you consider excellent and poor, this excellent is the best. Likewise, if you consider the educational qualification, let's say A level, O level, degree, likewise, right? Within them, from top to bottom, you can see the qualification, the qualification is increased. So you can order these qualifications, right? For example, if you have two individuals, A and B, and if you are interested about the educational qualification of A and B, right? Let's say A's educational qualification is O level and B's educational qualification is A level, right? Now tell me, can you do this comparison? Tell me, is that possible or not? Can you compare whether these educational qualifications are same or not? Can you do this? Is it possible or not? You can compare. You can compare you can say, yes, A's educational qualification is not equals to the B's. This is okay. And can you compare like this? A's educational qualification is less than that of B's. Is it okay? It is also possible, right? And can you do this kind of like, can you divide, or can you get the ratio between A's educational qualification divided by B's educational qualification? Can you get a ratio between these two? No. Or can you subtract the educational qualification? Can you do this subtraction? It's also not possible. So these things can't do under ordinal scale measurements. So basically, simply we can do these things, right? Okay, so that is what we called ordinal scale measurements. So we can do this kind of comparisons for ordinal scale variables, right? And then we come to the next part, interval measurements, right? Interval scale measurements. So there, in this interval scale measurements, observations are have all the features in ordinal measurements, and here you can easily calculate the differences between arbitrary pairs. Differences ඔයාලට calculate කරන්න පුළුවන්, right? For example, the temperature in Celsius, right? We have the temperature in two locations, let's say A and B, right? So the A's temperature is -5. B's temperature is -25. Or let's say A's temperature is 5 Celsius scale. So this temperature is measured in Celsius, right? Temperature, right? So this is 25. And here, can you check whether the temperature of A is equals to the temperature of B? Can you do this kind of a comparison? We can check whether these temperatures are equal or not. Or you can say whether the temperature A is less than temperature B. Can you get the temperature difference between these two? Temperature B minus temperature A? Is it okay to obtain that? The difference between the temperature difference between those 2 points. Can you do this? Yes, it is possible. So all these things can be done. And now tell me, can you take the ratio between the temperature A and temperature B? Can you get this kind of ratio for this case? Actually, in this case, this temperature is measured in Celsius. So this case, you can't do this, because I will give you the reason. Here, if you want to come up with this kind of a ratio in mathematics, right, there should be a true 0 point, right? True 0 point එකක් තියෙන්න ඕන. So what is the meaning of a true 0 point? For example, there is a point Celsius 0 somewhere here, right? So what is the meaning of this true 0 point? What is the meaning of 0? If we mention, okay, the value is 0, what is the meaning of that? What you will understand? 0 කියලා කිව්වම මොකද අපිට එකෙන් තේරෙන්නේ? True meaning එක. That means there is nothing, right? It's empty or something like that. But in this case, if the temperature is 0, right? Is that mean, right? Is that mean that there is no any temperature on this point? If the value is Celsius 0, does that mean that the value, this temperature at this point is empty, or there is no any temperature at this point? Let's say at the location C. Then temperature 0 කියන්නේ එතන temperature එකක් නැහැ කියන එකද එහෙම නැත්නම් වෙන meaning එකක්ද?
There is a temperature.
Yeah, there is a temperature. දන්නවනේ අපි ice මිදෙන්නේ 0 වලදී කියලා අපි ඉගෙනගෙන තියෙනවා. So that means there is a temperature and its value is 0. So in this kind of scenario, right, the true meaning of 0 is not represented here. So in this case, we say that there is no true 0 point for this kind of an example, right? මේ වගේ වෙලාවට true 0 point එකක් නැහැ කියලා කියන ඇත්තටම 0 වල meaning එක මෙතන කියවෙන්නේ නැති නිසා. So in such cases, you are not allowed to calculate these kind of ratios, right? To calculate this kind of ratios, there should be a true 0 point. Okay, so if you measure the temperature in Celsius, like in this example, there is no any true 0 point, then that means there you can't calculate this kind of ratios. Right, so this is the characteristic of an interval measurement variable. So here in this case, you can do this kind of mathematical, these kind of operators. You can check whether the two values are equal or one is greater than no other, and also you can get the differences. And if you go to the next level, ratio scale measurements, right, other than the all the things that you could do in previous category, previous measurements, right, you can meaningfully calculate the ratios between arbitrary pairs of numbers, right? අර කලින් කියපු characteristics වලට අමතරව ඊට අමතරව ඔයගලන්ට ratios උත් calculate කරන්න පුළුවන්. For example, if you have two individuals here, let's say A and B, and we are observing the weight of these individuals in kilograms. Let's say A's weight is 25 and B's weight is 50, right? You can check whether the weight of A is the weight of B, right? You can check whether these weights are equal or not. You can say weight of A is less than 50. You can get the difference between these weights. All these things are okay, and other than that, you can get the ratios, because if you consider 0 here, that means there is no one 0 kilogram කියලා කියන්නේ එතන මෙතන මිනිස්සෙක් නැහැ කියන එක. So there the true 0 point is here, so you can meaningfully calculate the ratios like this. You can say you can get the ratio of 50 over 25. If you simplify this, so this is equals 2. So basically you can say, we can make that simplify from 25 times 1 with a 2. So basically you can say WA is as WB is equals to twice 2 times WA. Big weight දෙගුණයක්. Likewise, you can calculate the meaningful ratios, right, when we are considering this kind of in ratio scale measurements. Okay, so that is, so as a summary here, you can see you can do all these operators when it is in ratio scale. And here, if you observe that from nominal to ratio, you can see in nominal scale, you can do only few things, right? But when you go from nominal to ratio, here you can see in ratio scale variables, you can gather more information than nominal scale ones. Right, මේ පැත්තට යන්න අපේ variable එකේ contain වෙලා තියෙන information ප්‍රමාණය, the information contained in that in the certain variable is increased from nominal to ratio. That means you can get more information from nominal scale from ratio scale variables other than the nominal scale variables. So therefore, before you are going to analyze your data set, you should have an idea about what is the variable, what is the variable type, and what is the scale of measurement for these variables, right? So that is very important. Right. Okay. So as a summary, basically in this presentation, we discuss some of the definitions regarding statistics and what are the limitation, and we discussed certain terminology regarding statistics, and then we discussed about the variables, right? Basically, variables divided into two categories: categorical and numerical, or qualitative and quantitative. Quantitatives again divides into two categories: discrete and continuous. And then we discussed about scales of measurements: nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. You should be able to understand the differences between these scales of measurements. And once you are given the data set, you should be able to understand what is the data type, what is the variable type, and what is the scale of measurements. Right. So do you have any questions up to this point? Okay, it seems that there are no any questions. Okay, let me open the other. Right. So we are going to discuss about data collection, and how to briefly we are going to briefly discuss about how to frame a question. Okay. Now, so what is data? So data, as we discussed earlier, data basically, data are the measurements of facts that are collected from a statistical unit or the entity. Or in other words, right, data are observed values of a variable. If we consider a variable, right, if we consider a certain variable, the values, right, so those are what we call what we call data. And basically, data are divided into two categories, primary data and secondary data. Right? If when you are doing a survey, when you are when you are doing a certain research or a specific study, right? You can use data. um uh, if you can use primary data or secondary data. So I will explain what is primary data and what is secondary data. Primary data means if you collect data for the first time, right? According to the objectives of your study, that is what we call the primary data, right? For example, if you are doing if you are doing a research, right, uh, regarding the monthly household income in Sri Lanka, right? You don't, you have to collect data by yourself. That means that if there is no any materials to refer, then decide to collect data by yourself. ඕගොල්ලම data collect කරන්න decide කරනවා. Then those data are called as primary data. Simply, if you collect data for the first time, then that is what we call primary data. Secondary data are data that is already collected by someone else for some specific purpose, but they are available for the present study as well. For example, the previous study, household income in Sri Lanka, assume that the Department of Census and Statistics has conducted this kind of a survey, and they have the data set uploaded in their website. So you think that, okay, these data are more relevant for my study, so therefore I'm not going to collect data by myself. I will use that data set. Then it becomes a secondary data. Sometimes you can download data sets from the internet. No, at the moment, the world is the whole world is the main topic in the world is big data, right? The large number of data are generated in a second, right? In anywhere of the kind of the world. So those, most of the times we can access those data, right? So those are called, they are not collected by us. So then it becomes secondary data. Sometimes you might use data from certain company reports or central bank reports or data sets that is uploaded in the Department of Census website, right? Those data are, those sources, those data are called as secondary data, right? Okay. So, however, if you are using secondary data, you have to be very careful because of the certain reasons. I will discuss those things later. And if you are using primary data, then you have to follow a specific steps to collect primary data. That means you have to decide how to collect data, whether to design a questionnaire or whether to conduct an interview, or whether to observe the process and collect data. Those things has to be decided according to the nature of your study. So if you are going to collect data for the first time, that means if you are going to use primary data for your study, right? Most of the times these people will involve in data collection, right? Investigator is the person who investigate the scenario. An interviewer, there might be an interviewer who asks questions from the respondent, right? And the respondents are the individuals or entities that gives us the information, gives us data. So those are, we have to deal with these people when we are dealing with data collection in primary data. So these are the basic, these are the most popular methods that we can use to collect primary data. So those things are, those methods are depend on your study, on your topic of the study, right? Sometimes it's okay to work with a questionnaire to get data or the schedules, right? You can prepare a questionnaire and you can distribute the questionnaire to your to the selected group, and you can get the information, you can get data. Or in schedule means you have the arranged, you have the questionnaire with you, and you ask the question from the respondent, and with the response of the respondent, you yourself mark down the relevant information. So that is a schedule, right? And you can conduct an interview with the respondent and get the relevant data, or you can observe the process and collect data. For example, if you want, assume that there is a junction, and you want to set up a color light system in that junction. For that, when you are going to set up a color lights in a certain junction, you have to decide what is the time, right? What is the waiting time from one direction to another? In that case, right, in statistics, there are techniques like boson processes and so on, right? There you need to count how many vehicles pass through a junction throughout a specific period of time. In such cases, right, you can't do this, you can't get this information, get this data while sitting at a lecture hall or while sitting at home, right? අපිට වාහන count, අපිට මොකයි junction එකකින් pass වෙන වාහන count කරගන්න අපිට ගෙදර ඉඳන් හරි lecture hall එකේ ඉඳලා හරි කරන්න බෑනේ. We have to go to that exact place, and we have to count, we have to observe the pattern, how the vehicles are moving here and there in certain time periods, and we have to observe the process, right? So in such cases, you can't use questionnaires or interviews, or those methods are invalid. So there you have to use, observe the process and get the relevant data points. So that is what we call direct personal observation, right? We can collect data from the observations as well. So these are basically, these are the most popular data collection methods for primary data, right? Here, these are some, here you can see, you can do interviews, here schedules, telephone conversation interviews, mailed question, you can mail the questionnaire, and nowadays this is very popular. You can easily create a Google form, and you can distribute the form using the emails for the emails of the respondents, and you can collect data. However, sometimes the respondent rate is, in such cases, might be low, because sometimes people may refuse to refuse to fill your Google form, right? So therefore, you have to be careful about respondent rate when you are collecting primary data. Also, you can use here direct personal observation. By observing the behavior, you can collect data, right? So these are the methods of collecting secondary data. If you are using the secondary data, you can use internet-based sources, right? Through the internet, you can download lots of data sets nowadays, actually. Professional organizations, then the company information, government agencies like Central Bank, the Department of Census and Statistics, right? And also there are some certain educational institutes and specialist centers, right? There you can collect data. You can collect data that is related to your topic as well. So those are called as secondary data, and these are the ways that you can find secondary data. However, if you are using secondary data, we have to be very careful about that because of these reasons. First of all, you have to check whether these data are available or not, right? And the other one is this data is suitable, whether this secondary data is suitable for your for the objectives of your research, right? Sometimes there might be certain variables that is important for your research, and sometimes some important variables may not be the data for some other important variables may not be collected in those secondary data. So therefore you have to check whether the availability as well as the suitability of secondary data, and also the adequacy. That means, for example, the same example I'm taking, the monthly household average household in Sri Lanka income in Sri Lanka. For example, you can find a data set collected by the Department of Census and Statistics in 1990, right? And they have collected monthly household income in individuals in Sri Lanka. And do you think that those data set that data set is okay to use? Okay to analyze the average monthly income of household in Sri Lanka in 2023? 1990 collect කරපු data ටිකක් ඕගොල්ලෝ ගාව තියෙනවා. Can you use හැබැයි අපිට ඕනි 2023 වල average income එක ගැන idea එකක් අරගන්න. So is it okay to use that data set, that secondary data set for our study? There, right? It is not good to use because those data are not adequate, right? If we compare the expenses and the income in 1990 and 2023, right? More than 2 decades, nearly 3 decades, right? So there are lots of changes have made in the economy of the country, and so on. So therefore those data are not adequate. But the collected characteristics or the variables are same. However, those data are not adequate. So if you are using those kind of a data set that is not adequate, your conclusions and all the things will be misleading, right? So therefore you have to be very careful about using secondary data, and also the reliability. You have to think about the reliability. Assume that if you have a secondary data set, 2 secondary data sets, right? Same variables have been considered, and one has been collected by a certain group of school children, and the other data set has been collected and prepared by statisticians in the Department of Census and Statistics. So what is the most reliable data set? The data set obtained by the school children, or the data set collected by the professionals in the Department of Census and Statistics? Which one is more reliable?
The second one.
The second one, because they are more professional, and they know they know more about statistics than school children. So the more reliable source is the second one. So therefore, if you are using this secondary data, you have to be careful about these things, right? So that is the difference between primary data and secondary data. Okay. Now we are going to discuss about some basic things regarding the questionnaire. Sometimes when you are doing a research, you might want to prepare a questionnaire, right? සමහරවිට ඔයගොල්ලෝ questionnaire එකක් හදන්න ඕනි වෙන්න පුළුවන්, right? For example, if you want to have an idea about a new brand of a certain biscuit, right? You want to get comments, or you want to analyze the customer feedback, right? There you might want to prepare a small questionnaire, right? So then now I'm going to discuss what are the question types in a questionnaire, and what are the things that we have to consider when preparing a questionnaire. Easily nowadays, there are lots of templates and also lots of websites that you can create questionnaires. Even in the Google Forms can be used. However, right, in a questionnaire, you can see these kind of questions. The first one is the simple alternative questions. That means yes, no questions. In simple alternative questions, there are two choices. Yes, no, likewise. And sometimes there may be multiple choice questions. That means you have to select our results. You have to select a response from out of 3 or 4 multiple answers. Right. Sometimes there may be multiple choice questions with a single response, or multiple choice questions with multiple response. Sometimes for this one, as an example, this one here, you can say, let's say, what is your highest educational qualification? You have 4 choices: O level, A level, degree, and PhD, likewise. And here there is only single response. Highest educational qualification, it responses දෙක තුනක් තියෙන බෑනේ, right? And here there might be multiple choice questions. Multiple responses may be there. For example, what is your leisure time activity? What is your hobby, right? One might have more than one hobbies. එක්කෙනෙකුට එක hobby එකකට වැඩිය තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. Right, you have several options: reading, cycling, swimming, likewise. So some can select more than one response. So those are called as multiple choice, multiple responses, right? Rank in order questions. Sometimes you can rank order the answers, right? Good, better, best, likewise. And the Likert scale questions, some kind of a rank order questions. And in Likert scale, there are here from worst to best, right? You have choices, and in the middle you have the neutral point, right? No idea, or something like strongly agree, no idea, disagree, strongly disagree, likewise. From worst to best, or best to worst, with a neutral point is there. And open-ended questions. In open-ended questions, here in the questionnaire, sometimes you might have seen this. Here, sometimes some might ask, what is the suggestions that you can improve that? What is your suggestion to improve this product? May product improve karan. Oyage suggestions monwad. So it is open-ended. You can write anything. You can write your own idea there. So those are called as open-ended questions. However, if you, this actually, when we are going to the data analysis part, these open-ended questions are very difficult to analyze, because you will get, if you have 50 questionnaires, 50 response, right? You might have 50 answers for this open-ended question. So it is very difficult to analyze. However, try to minimize these open-ended questions in your questionnaire. But sometimes there might be open-ended questions, right? Okay, so in a certain questionnaire, you can identify these types of questions, right? And the next important thing is how to frame a questionnaire properly, right? Here I have given some important tips, right? Basic important tips, right? First of all, there should be an attractive layout, right? A proper font should be used, right? Then the alignments, right? Alignments should be properly font sized, and the alignments, right? All the things should be should be in an attractive way. Otherwise, the respondents may feels very uncomfortable to fill that questionnaire. And the next thing is you have to use simple wordings, and your question should be very brief and specific, right? Actually, this is based on the audience, right? If you are going to distribute your questionnaire to certain that means for example, academics, or who are familiar with the statistical terms and those things, no matter, you can, it's okay to use statistical terms. But general public, if you distribute your questionnaire to the individuals who doesn't have any idea about statistics or any other field, right? Try to eliminate statistical or technical terms, right? Not statistical, technical terms. In biology, there are certain technical terms, physics, or in any subject, in commerce, right? There are technical terms, but when you are preparing a questionnaire, right, you have to be careful with the audience, with the respondents, and also try to minimize those technical words, and also try to brief the question and specify the question. Otherwise, your respondent rate will be very low. And the questions should be logically arranged, and the necessary instructions should be given. For example, basically, when we are designing questionnaire, first of all, you can start with this kind of here these kind of simple alternative questions. Then you can add multiple choice questions, then rank order Likert scale question, and at the end you can add open-end questions likewise. Then it is very logically arranged questionnaire. And also necessary instructions should be given. For example, there is a question, for example, question number 5 is, are you a university student, right? Sometimes your respondents, some of your respondents may be university students, some of your respondents may not be university students, right? So therefore then you have to if your question, the 6th question, is related to the university students, then you have to give necessary instruction. If for example, question number 5, are you a university student, yes or no? Then you can say, if your answer for question number 5 is yes, please go to the question number 6. Otherwise, go to question number 7. Likewise, you have to provide necessary instructions, right? හරියට instructions දෙන්න ඕනේ, නැත්නම් ඔයගලන්ට ගොඩක් misleading දේවල් තමයි ලැබෙන්නේ. And avoid personal or sensitive questions. Normally, we are not collecting the name or the phone number, even the salary, right? We are not taking, we are not collect those things, right? Normally, right? Those are very personal and sensitive questions. So therefore, always try to avoid these things, right? Sometimes those things might be essential, but you can use another way to find the answer for those things without directly asking the question about these things. And also, once you prepare the questionnaire, before distributing to the certain specific group, to your sample, right, you have to pre-test the questionnaire. You can select a few of the individuals and you can distribute the questionnaire to them, and you can ask to comment on the questionnaire. What are the confused questions in the questionnaire, and those things can be identified by doing a pre-test, right? Then you can distribute your questionnaire. Sometimes you can say to increase the respondent rate. If you are doing the research regarding a certain food item, Then you can say, you can give some you can give some those brands, those who are going to fill this questionnaire as an motivation likewise, right? So those things can, and also you can tell that you can tell that tell them that after the research you will inform the results of the of your study to the respondents, right? Those things can be done to increase the respondent rate. However, if you are designing a questionnaire, you have to think about these things. Okay, so that's about framing a questionnaire, right? So now we discussed about data and data and data collection methods. So if you are doing a primary data collection, if you are going to use primary data, you have to use a proper data collection method to collect data, right? There you have to use certain approaches. Okay, so that's about data and data collection. So next week we will start a descriptive analysis of data. There we will discuss how to describe our variables before we are moving to inferential statistics part, right? Okay, so that's all I have for today. So if you have any questions, now you can ask. All right, so it seems that there are no any questions. Okay, so